interview, and I will make sure I let you all know the details of that. All right, are we live on YouTube? Can we hear? Can we hear? Yep, we are. Yes. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. So let's just jump right into it because we are a little behind our regularly scheduled program. So, hello everyone. I am Dr. Vernita Glenn-White. Go by Dr. V, your brilliant solutionist, and welcome to the Remarkable Shift live series show, something that we started at the top of this new year, and I'm super excited. This is episode 2, and we are talking about breaking the chains of, well, it was going to be imposter syndrome. I don't like that phrase. And then so I changed it to perceived fraudulence. But as you stay with me through this series, you'll know that I found another phrase that I want to use. But we're really going to drill down to how to own your success with confidence and certainty. So again, welcome to the live series show. I am here to help you if you are an elite achiever or a high performer to make sure that you are getting those practical action steps that you can take so that you can get the results that you desire. Is really about doing the inner work so you can get the outer results. So it's a combination of personal leadership and strategies and tactics that you need to do so that you can get that business or professional or career success that you are seeking. It's a holistic approach, and everything starts with what is happening in your mind, and it's going to take a remarkable shift for you to do that. So we're talking about small changes for big improvement. So if you've ever felt like you were one mistake away of being found out, and a lot of people talk about that as being like an imposter syndrome. And I don't like that phrase imposter syndrome because I'm like, I'm not trying to deceive anybody on purpose. And I don't like, it's not a syndrome to me. Right. And, I've read a lot of other research things and, just look up the definition of some of the words that we use. And I'm trying to be more cautious about that myself. But before we dive in, I want to make sure that you understand that, yes, this is a live series. It's a live show, but I do want you to subscribe to the channel, to the show, because if you do, you'll get a lot of behind the scenes things. You'll get updates and things like that. And so it'd be great for you to subscribe to the show and you get additional resources that are not out here, for the public. It's only if you subscribe, and you can do that with that information down below, going to drvernitaglenwhite.com/remarkable shift. And you'll learn more about the upcoming workshop that I have this Saturday at 11 a.m. The Renew, Refine, and Rise workshop. You can learn more about that by also going to drvernitaglenwhite.com/3R live, and you can get all the information there. All right, so imposter syndrome, some people use it, some people don't use it. I don't like to use it, but I do understand where it comes from. It comes from you not owning, who you are, second guessing yourself, questioning yourself, feeling like you don't belong. But I don't think that's always the case, right? And the reason why I'm talking about self-doubt, because that's an undertone of, imposter syndrome or perceived fraudulence. And I want to talk to you about the deeper, let's go through the agenda first. So what we're going to talk about is what the new phrase is not. So imposter syndrome, perceived fraudulence. I have some other definitions I'm going to talk to you about. So we're going to talk about what it is and what it is not. Then we're going to talk about 3 ways to build up your confidence and your certainty so that you can overcome self-doubt. And then we're going to talk about some real life examples. The reason why this is important is because we're still at the beginning of the new year. We're still in the season of newness. And if you're looking at your goals and maybe you've fallen off a little bit, remember I told you I don't want you to have a janky January. I don't want you to have a faded February. And I don't want you to have a miserable March, right? We want to make sure that we have a joyous January, a fabulous and fierce February, and a magnificent and miraculous March. And it all starts with you looking at what your goals and your visions are, your vision and your goals are right now. Go back and look at them and filter everything I'm about to say through that lens. And when you do that, you're not getting these random things, like these random concepts. You're not just listening to somebody else talk about something. You're like, I heard this before. you're taking it and you're applying it to what you're doing right now. So look at your goals, look at your task, look at what you want to accomplish, by the end of January. Let's not even go out to the whole year. What do you want to accomplish by the end of January? And what self-doubt keeps knocking at your door? Because if you put this down in November, December of last year, and you're looking at it again at the beginning of 2025, and you're still kind of shaky about, well, can I do it? If I'm not going to do it, then you haven't gone and through the steps of understanding if there's any underlying self-doubt in there, and you may be feeling like an imposter or perceived fraudulence or anything like that. We want to make sure that we take all of that out of the way so that you can accomplish that goal, because the world needs you to do the thing that you were meant to do so that you can live a life poured out above ground before all your brilliance goes with you underground. So that is our agenda. So the first thing I want to do is talk about a few definitions. And you'll understand why I don't want to say imposter syndrome. You yourself can look up the definition of imposter and then look up the definition of syndrome, and then you'll understand why I don't want to use that phrase. Now, I came across this word perceived fraudulence, and I've said this in several of my videos way back, where I started saying perceived fraudulence. So I'm going to tell you the definition. And now, as I was doing research, I'm like, I don't think I want to use that phrase anymore, because that doesn't get to the core of what I really want to talk about. But perceived fraudulence, it means the focus on the internal belief that you are a fraud and the anxiety around being found out. Some of us have felt like, all right, I don't like, maybe not like you're a fraud, like you're purposely deceiving people, but sometimes you may have had that, you've been in a situation, you're like, if I make this mistake, then they're going to know that I don't really belong here. I do believe that there are people in the world who get positions or opportunities, and they are not supposed to be there. They talk themselves through, talk their way up to that level, and they got the chance to do it, but then it's like people will find out that you are really not supposed to be here. Like you're somebody's brother, uncle, cousin, sister, something, and you were here and you're not really qualified for the job. People like that, they should be feeling like imposters, but the crazy thing is that they don't. It's the people who have it all together and they're supposed to be there that they're feeling this. So that's one definition of perceived fraudulence, and I was like, okay, I like that, but then I was like, let's break that word down even more, and then you'll understand why I decided to shift that too. As you can see, I'm still kind of like on this high of my podcast. I'm trying to like calm it down, but I'm just so excited. All right. So perceive, let's break that down. So, the researcher that I am, I like to go and give you like the concepts. And so we're not just saying things all willy nilly. So to perceive means to become aware or conscious of something, to come to the realization or to understand. It means to interpret or look on or at someone in a particular way, to identify by means of the senses. Fraudulence means the fact of intending to deceive by doing something dishonest or illegal. So then I was like, maybe perceived fraudulence doesn't work. And we're going to get to how this relates to self-doubt and how this relates to making sure that you overcome that so you can achieve your goals and um to achieve your goals for this month and beyond with confidence and certainty. The reason why I struggle with now not wanting to say perceived fraudulence, because I believe there are a lot of gifted people who are intelligent, who are smart, who are competent, but you're in situations where you downplay your level of genius. And for a lot of us, that happened in our professional lives and that happened academically. And then as you're going into a new venture, you start downplaying that you start downplaying your smartness or your intellect. And part of it, now you can let me know if I'm wrong, sometimes it's like you feel guilty for not struggling like some people. Sometimes you may feel guilty that things come easy to you or more naturally to you. Yes, you do work hard, but you're not struggling to do it. You're not putting a lot of effort. And then when you see other people do it, it's part of empathy, like, oh man, it wasn't that hard for me. I can feel bad that it was hard for them. And so like, well, let me downplay it. And a lot of us do this subconsciously, right? Where we're like, well, I don't want to shine my light too bright. That's an example of, I'm going to act like I'm struggling, or I'm not going to finish my work as fast as I know I can because I don't want that light to shine on me. So I'm just going to, dim down my light. So you downplay a lot of the things you know. And when you're doing that, then because it's a sense of guilt. And if you keep doing that, then subconsciously you're telling yourself, well, I'm not supposed to be here. Then you start doubting yourself because you downplayed, all the things that you were capable of doing. Let me know if this is landing for you, because this is something that I'm still processing. Because, like I said, I don't think a lot of us purposely go out and deceive people. So we're not imposters. We're not, frauding anybody. But I do think there's a form of internal gaslighting. I do believe that there's a form of internal gaslighting or professional downplaying. I'm trying to see if I looked up those. I wrote down those definitions. I didn't write down those exact definitions, but you understand what I'm saying. Internal gaslighting, like we know external gaslighting, where people, it's like, making things appear as though they weren't, questioning yourself or having you question yourself. And it's just a form of manipulation. I believe a lot of people, especially if you're a high achiever, high performer, I believe we do that to ourselves. I've experienced that. I wouldn't have called it internal gaslighting, but now that I've looked at the definition, I was like, I think I've done this to myself. And then when you do that, that's where self doubt starts creeping in on a bigger level. And then that stops you subconsciously for going to your next level or starting something new and thinking that you can be successful in that area. And now I can understand how it can come across as like imposter syndrome, but we're not going to use that word. Okay. So it says like, how does this, why does it happen? Like I said, I do think it happens because you may feel guilty that you are successful in an area. If you were in academia and you've been, like the smart student all your life, and then you've gotten to a level and people are like, oh my gosh, it's taking me like 5 hours to do my work. And you're like, you knock this out in an hour or 30 minutes. Then because you don't want to be apart from the group, you might, go along with the like, yeah, it was kind of hard. Or you may not say that it took you, in half the time to finish the work. If you are in business or if you are in some group programs, like we're going to talk about this coaching and advice industry, in self-help, if you're in these programs, you may be around people who are like maybe not getting business or maybe not getting a certain concept, and you are rocking it out. Or people are saying their money goals and their revenue targets, and yours is significantly higher. So you downplay what you want to do and you kind of like dim your light. And that's a form of internal gaslighting, I believe. And if you keep doing that, then you're telling your brain, like, well, some of the things that we actually want to do, maybe we can't do it. So we're going to stop dreaming big. And then you start manifesting those things. And that's who you become. So that's where, like I said, self doubt come in, and then your confidence starts to shake, and you start seeing cracks in your certainty about certain things where you used to be strong and confident before. So I think sometimes that happens because you still want to be a part of the group. It's not fun being isolated, right? And so let me know if I'm wrong. It's just something that is coming to me that this is in a totally different direction, especially after I did the podcast interview. It's like, wait a minute, we got to talk about something, because it's not just, you're feeling like a fraud, like you don't think you belong. Like, I think you do know you belong, but it's like, well, what are the ramifications that will happen if people really understood like how smart I am or how easy this was for me? Will I still be accepted, right? And I know I personally dealt with that, whether that was getting my doctorate degree, whether I was being a college professor, even when I was in some high level masterminds, it was still kind of like, this isn't hard for me, but everybody else was struggling. Either I stayed quiet because I'm like, I do not want to be the outcast. I do not want all of this attention. Or, if some people were struggling with certain things, I was like, oh yeah, me too, downplaying. And it's like, that was detrimental to my internal beliefs and my self confidence and things like that. So one thing is, sometimes you think you may have to downplay yourself so that you can continue to be part of the group or to be more relatable. And you have to go back and ask, just check some of the stories or situations that you put yourself in or that you may have been a part of, where when the moment that people did find out who you are, did somebody tell you not to act a certain way, or did you receive a consequence? And if you did, you have to ask yourself, well, is that the kind of environment that I want to be in now? That can go for anything. So you have to dispel the myth of, if I let my true light shine, my true genius shine, or really let my competence show, that just because someone else is insecure, they have a problem with that, that's none of my business. So we're going to dispel the myth of that you have to downplay or have this kind of perceived fraudulence, imposter like mentality, that in order to be relatable, you have to dim your light and downplay and do all of that. You may not think that's true, but you have to check how you're showing up when you get into certain circles. So, one action step to do that, okay, thank you. Save. Okay, one okay. Things are popping up on my computer. One action step to do that is to elevate your circle. And I know you're like, I like my social group. I like, where I am. But if you have to constantly downplay, yourself, if you're like, example, if you're in a group and people are like, well, what's your revenue goal? And somebody said, oh, like $10,000 this month. And you had it, well, I want to make 50,000 or 100,000 or $250,000 this month. And you're hesitating about putting that in the chat or speaking up, then that's where you work on yourself. Because if people are saying it, and if other people are saying it and they're not getting judged, then you're in the right atmosphere if people can embrace that. But if somebody second guesses that, that's not your fault. That's somebody else's issue. If it's, you want to have a certain lifestyle, or you want your family to operate a certain way, or you want to learn like new skill sets, and you can put that out there. If people are embracing that, great, you are with your people. If people are questioning, then again, that has nothing to do with you. You need to elevate your circle. Another way to make sure that you uh, work through this is start tracking your progress. This is how we're getting overcoming self-doubt, and we're going to stop downplaying. We're going to stop doing internal gaslighting ourselves and things like that. You have to start tracking your wins and writing down everything. Make yourself, I had this from one of my first business coaches, make yourself a badass list and write down all the things that you have accomplished. I don't care how small it is, because your brain needs that evidence, like, hey, we've done things before. We've succeeded, in multiple areas of our lives. And we've done this in a big way. We've done this in a small way. It doesn't matter. We've done it. And you have to constantly remind yourself of those things. And that is constantly building up and working through your confidence muscle and your certainty muscle. And so you can stop downplaying, because when you start working with people who are really at that high level, they have too much going on for them to question whether or not you should or should not be doing something, right? If you're in when you're in the right groups, you'll find out that no matter how big you dream, somebody's dreaming bigger, and they're willing to help you along the way, or give you the information or the strategies and steps that you need to make sure that you accomplish that, so that you can hit those targets and things like that. And that's another way to make sure that you are overcoming self-doubt, because you're around people who are full of themselves in a good way, and then you're borrowing their light, and fueling your own light. The other thing I want to talk about is, now we're going into how to build up your confidence and your certainty to overcome the self-doubt and the internal gaslighting. So let's break down this definition. So a definition of confidence is a feeling of trust in one's ability, qualities, and judgment, your attitude about your skills and your abilities. And certainty excludes doubt. It focuses on the absolute truth of a situation. They're similar and they're different, right? So you can do some more research about that. But confidence is is not really, even though it says it's a feeling of trust, it's not something like you feel, but it's something about the trust in your abilities, the things that you can do yourself. And certainty is like, well, I know I can do this without a shadow of a doubt. And it's coming from a place of was it absolute? Yeah, coming from a place of absolute truth. Some people say that you can't that you shouldn't be certain, because confidence allows for uncertainty to happen. But there are some things that you can be certain about. You can be certain that you know what you're doing. You can be certain about you're on your right path for your purpose. You can be certain that you're going to achieve certain goals because you're doing everything within your power to do those things within your control. I believe that there is an area of certainty, and there's something that you feel inside your body. It's like an embodiment feeling that I know that I know that I can accomplish or do this particular thing. And then you show up with that conviction and confidence, and everything about you oozes that your belief in your values, because you're in alignment with that. So you can both are important. Some level of uncertainty, like I said, that leaves room for flexibility, so you're not so hung up like, I must do this by the end of this date. It's like, well, if you made that date up, then you get to move it, so you can be flexible, so you don't have to be like, to the T with that. But overall, when it's talking about something that you're supposed to do or something that you want to do, you do have to have this level of certainty within your body that there's no room for self-doubt, because you've done all the preparation, you've gathered all the information, and you've executed, right? So let me know down below if you want some more information, or if you want to expand that topic. But start looking. Don't get so hung up on confidence and certainty, because you can go down the rabbit hole. But just know that both are important to make sure that you are uh, eliminating that inner gaslighter, or to help you to stop downplaying your skill set, and to make sure that you are overcoming self-doubt. The other thing, so those are the definitions. So what can you do? You can start with self-validation. And self-validation, again, I always want you to put these things that I say through the lens of your vision or your goals, because just because I say self-validation, if you're just randomly talking about self-validation, that's not going to help you. So what self-validation do you need as it relates to the current goals that you are focusing on? And that means to stop seeking external kudos. Right? We do love that, especially if you are have been in an environment where you're always praised, with a gold star certificate or a bonus, whatever it is. But when those things go away, can you still have that internal sense of accomplishment, and like you're proud of yourself, and give yourself that good job? And you need to be able to do that as it relates to your goals, even if you haven't accomplished them yet. You need to start speaking those things as if they were, and start embodying that already before you achieve that, because you know what achievement feels like, you know what success feels like in certain areas. So start transferring that onto the new thing that you're doing, and then that will help to diminish and to eliminate self-doubt. Also, what you can do is, we already know this. Take your big goal, make it down into smaller tasks, and then break those things down even more. I just don't think everyone does that. I don't. I think, you have these goals, then there are certain things that you can do, but then you get caught up in the to-do list instead of tracking the things that are going to move you forward to your goal. Go back to whatever goal that you have and break them down, break the task down as small as possible, and then every day do something and check it off, and then that starts building up your confidence and knowing that you're on your way to achieve what you want to achieve. Again, I use this example thinking about school all the time. You didn't If you went to college, you didn't get your degree, the second day you were there. You had to break that down by year, by semester, by classes, by assignments. And every day you did something. You accomplished a task, you completed an assignment, you took a test, you finished a semester, you finished a year, and that started building up your confidence, and you gained that momentum. And then out of nowhere, it's like, oh, it's time for graduation. We have to take that same, for a lot of us, you have to take that same kind of framework and apply it to whatever new goal that you have now. Now, the next thing to do to build up your confidence and your certainty so that you can eliminate self-doubt is to refrain from negative thoughts. And yes, we hear this all the time, but how many of us actually take a thought that we have? I suck at this. I'm not good at this. Who am I to show up? Who am I to teach this? Who am I to build this business? Who am I to want this type of family, this type of body, this type of lifestyle, this type of business, whatever your thing is, to write a book, whatever it is, build a new house, buy a new house. I don't care what it is. When you have those, you have to immediately stop yourself And the Bible says, cast down the thought. That means you take it, look at it, and cast it down and put the positive spin on it, or to speak life into that, and then it goes away and cast it down. And you have to do that constantly. Sometimes I think when it's like, well, reframe your negative thoughts, you think you're supposed to do that one time and it's done. No, you do that as many times as you need to, so that thought no longer exists. You have to also put in new thoughts. So you can't just take out an old thought and think, okay, I'm good now. You do have to replace that with a new affirming thought, and it would be better if it aligns to your vision, and your mission and your goals. And don't feel bad if you have to constantly do that. It's not a one and done. And don't think that you're just going to, and it's not just positive thinking, because you do have to reframe that thought. And then you have to think positively, but positively in a way as it relates again to your vision and your goals. Like, we have to tie all these things back together, because thinking positively, you can just put a random thought up there and it can be good for the moment, but it's not going to be that thought to move you forward. Also, you want to make sure that you are, what do I want to say? Oh yeah. So another way to build up your confidence and your certainty to overcome self-doubt, especially if you're in a new area, just be open to know that you're going to have to learn a new skill set. I don't care what you have accomplished. If you haven't achieved the certain goal that you have now, that's because there's either a certain skill set you haven't learned, or you haven't maximized that skill set. And so you get, when you have those feelings of self-doubt or those negative thoughts, then you say, no, it's just something that I need to learn, or something I need to ramp up, or something I need to execute. And by you being in action that way, that should or I think it will cast down that negative thought, and to help you move into the direction that you are seeking. Now, this is the part I was really getting to. Like, I know I was like speeding through those other things. I do think they're important, but what I want to highlight is this part. All right. If you're with me, thank you so much. Leave your comments and thoughts down below. If you have any questions, put them in the chat. I love when you show up live, because then we can have this kind of dialogue. Like, if you ask me a question, I will answer it. That's why I want you all to know that I'm coming on, every Tuesday around this time, so that, I want to help you, or give you advice or strategies, or just some insights on different things, so that you can have the best year, or let's say best month ever. All right. So we're going to talk about perfect action over perfectionism. And the reason why I'm saying it that way is because you've probably heard the phrase that I want us to stop saying, to take imperfect action or progress over perfection. I'm gonna tell you why I don't like those phrases. Imperfect action. If you break down the word and look at the definition of imperfect, did I write it? Yes. The definition of imperfect is faulty or incomplete, flaws, errors, or problems. And I get the reason behind, or the intent behind the phrase imperfect action. That means, don't overthink, do it messy, just do it anyway. But for a lot of us, saying those little small words can do something in our subconscious. And you're like, oh, I don't want, the word, the definition of imperfect. And if you're saying that, you're like, I don't want to have flaws and errors and things that I'm doing, even though the intent is just do it anyway. It doesn't have to be, flawless before you get something out. But the other side to that is, you don't want to put out mess. So you have to understand, like, how your brain works, or get with someone to help you to see what's really going on, because it's not like a lot of us, we're not obsessive, like, oh gosh, I just can't get this out until it's like this perfect piece of thing. But it's like, subconsciously, it's like, I am going to read through and make sure that I don't have any errors before I put something out there. But am I wrong for doing that? So it's a lot that happens in our mind. The same thing with progress over perfection. Again, I understand what people are saying, but sometimes I think that keeps you in a trap. And stay with me, because it still ties into self-doubt and what we need to do to overcome that. If you only focus on progress, you sometimes may not, you may be giving yourself, how can I say this? You're letting yourself off the hook for doing what you need to do, because sometimes you can get so caught up in the journey, like, oh, progress over perfection, it doesn't matter as long as I'm still chugging along. But it's like eventually you need to land that plane to get to the destination so you can start a new flight, right? There are things that you just need to get done. And that's why I like to say perfect action. There's nothing wrong with the word perfect. Perfect means that you get something done. If you have the goal of writing a book, and every day you write, you have a certain number word count that you hit, by a certain week or month, you have like the a target of the number of chapters you want to write, this, that, and the other, all the other process, like you have timelines by things that you want to get done. When you complete those things, that's perfect action. But if you kind of like allow yourself to stay on the hook of being in progress, then you can like stretch those things out longer than they need to be. You're like, well, could you finish a chapter in a week? You could, but it's like, well, I'm in progress, so it may take me 2 weeks, or it's going to take me 6 months to finish my book, because as long as I'm, on the journey, like, come on, like you know the difference. And that's why you need some people to first you stop lying to yourself and hold yourself accountable, and then be around people who are going to help you be accountable to the things that you said you want to accomplish. Because at some point, like, are you hitting those targets every day? If you said you want to write a book, and you told yourself, I can write 300 words a day, then did you do that? If you said that you're going to work out this number of times, if you say that you're going to make these number of sales calls, or you're going to do this amount of reach out X, Y, and Z, are you hitting those targets? So when you do hit those targets, that's the perfect action that you're taking. And then that's building up your confidence and certainty that you will hit that goal. And that removes self-doubt. So that may be a little harsh. Let me know. But sometimes I think, some of these words that we say to ourselves, that's just keeping us at this low level, and we're not achieving the things that we can achieve, because that's that internal gaslighting that we do to ourselves, and we're becoming so critical when we don't have to be. So again, I do like perfect action, because it is about completing a task, and it's really, for me, it's perfect action over perfectionism. Not perfectionism, because that's the trait that you take on as a personality trait, where you have these unrealistic, expectations and standards for yourself, and that leads to unnecessary stress and anxiety and other mental health issues. So it's the perfectionism that's the problem, not the perfect action. So perfect means get it done, and action means taking the steps and doing the doggone thing. So perfect action over perfectionism, so you don't get caught up in the cycle of just um being in progress, because at some point progress needs to come to a stop. Like, it should be done. Like, when is the project or the process completed? Right. All right, so now how can you apply this in real life? So I know I've gone through this just a little quickly, but again, we're talking about overcoming um self-doubt, or breaking the chains of perceived fraudulence, imposter syndrome. But now that I'm really thinking about it, that internal gaslighting that we do to ourselves, I think a lot of us, because we've achieved a lot in certain areas, we can understand and work through external things. Yes, some people may have said some things that hurt your feelings, or caused you to be a certain way. It may have slowed you down, but and let me know if I'm wrong, we we can't keep focusing on the external, right? Because at some point, no matter the external is always going to happen, but you can change your environments. But guess what? You are everywhere you go. So it's more important to focus on the internal part, or the internal belief systems that you have, so that you can continue to move forward, because that is what you can control, right? That is what you can control. Um, so going back to talking about it as it relates to your goals, there's some work that you're probably going to have to do, going back and looking at what are your beliefs about what you wrote down for your vision board. Right? If you made a vision board, what are your beliefs about accomplishing whatever you put up there? And if there's still something, like, you still don't think you can accomplish, if you have some self-doubt around it, you need to do some work. Because if you don't deal with that inner critic, then you're not going to accomplish what you want to accomplish, or it's going to take you significantly longer to accomplish than it would have taken had you dealt with some of these things. I was on a training, kind of a training slash master class all last week, and this lady, she's run a successful 8-figure business and can tell anybody about business strategies and all of these things. But she has this new program where she tells people like it's about your personal leadership. Well, she says self leadership, I say personal leadership similar. And she gets into talking about you have to do the inner work, and that's not the sexy part. And if you've seen some of my other videos or the last episode, I talked about I shied away from really taking a deeper dive into that because I'm like, nobody wants to talk about, mindset or mind shifting or doing the inner work. But what I realize is they don't want to talk about it if it's not related to a tangible result. Because I guarantee if I said, if you do some of this work, you can get the money that you want, the love that you want, the body that you want, the lifestyle that you want. If you attach it to that, and then it starts looking a little more attractive, right? To do that inner work. And here's the thing: you don't have to stay in the inner work. It doesn't take years for you to do that. You're constantly in it. You have to do a little bit, then get out there and act. I think I gave this definition. I think maybe it was the last episode where if you're playing a game, if you're in sports, like life is a sport, and let's say that your personal leadership work that you're doing, that's on the practice field. But just like an athlete, you come off the practice field, then you have to eventually get into the real game. And then if you think about like something over seasons, basketball, football, baseball, tennis, whatever, you practice, then you have a match. Now, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. There's a lesson in both. And then you come back to the drawing board. You apply with either the win or the loss. You apply those lessons to that work on some things, get back into the practice, the inner work, and then you go back out and produce so you can get feedback on the outer results. So you don't have to spend years and years just working on yourself and self-help. You have to do a little bit and get back out there because it is a combat sport. So some questions you may have, and let me know if you have any additional, but you may say, well, what if I can't stop comparing myself to others? Because that's where a lot of self-doubt comes from, especially in our social media age. And as we're getting more and more platforms, and now the world is back open. So now not only are you seeing people on social media, you're seeing them out there in real life, and you're like, man, they're doing so great, and why am I still over here? I used to be successful and now I don't feel so successful. All of those things that inner critic. What you have to remember is that what you're seeing, whether it's on social media or for a segment of somebody's, outside life, you're seeing the highlight reel, and everyone's not showing you the behind the scenes, right? There are very few people who are willing to show you behind the scenes. And let's say this, people who do show you behind the scenes things, you judge them and you're like, oh, that can't be me. So you have to watch that, because there are people who are vulnerable out here, but you are like, well, they don't have what I want to achieve, or I'm not going to be that person, just whatever judgment you have. But you have to stop comparing your behind the scenes to somebody else's highlight reel, right? They may show this curated part of their lives, but you don't know how many takes it took for them to show up like that. I had a clip I just put on Instagram where it took me uh 7 takes to do this 2-minute video, and I showed this look of frustration. But if you saw the finished product, and I had someone say this, they were like, oh my gosh, you did so great on that video. And I was like, and I said thank you, because the end product was good, but it took me 7 takes. So if you're like, oh man, I'll never be able to do a video like that, or I'll never be able to speak like this person, then you're comparing yourself to that finished curated product instead of the behind the scenes. I saw a clip from I can never say his name. I think it's VT. And he's on YouTube, and he talked about some of the greatest orators of our time, especially Dr. Martin Luther King. And he says that, you know, the part of the I Have a Dream speech that's become so famous, that is the part of the speech that was rehearsed so many times, because he has said it over and over and over. He used to say it all the time in church. That's only a segment of the speech. The whole speech is good, but the most memorable part is the one that he rehearsed over and over. But when you see him in not real life, but when you hear that, it sounds like, it's like, oh my gosh, I'll never be able to speak like him. Well, one, you can learn that skill, or he does have he had a natural gift of doing that, but you can learn that skill. But it was something comforting to know that behind the scenes he were not rehearsed it, but he had practiced saying that over and over because somebody had already always asked him, "What is your dream?" And then the same thing with former President Barack Obama. His I think it's his "We Can" speech. That's what BT talked about. That he rehearsed that speech for months, like day in and day out. Everywhere he went, he rehearsed that speech. So when he finally delivered it, it was like, oh my gosh, like wow, right? And that's because he had practiced that. I said all that to say is like your confidence and your certainty is something that you can build on. It's something that you can practice. And it's something that you have to be willing to put in the work to build up and do that towards your vision and your dreams and your goals. So you can stop comparing yourself to other people and get to work and building up that skill set. So that was a long way to answer that question. Something else that you may be thinking about is I don't feel qualified enough to succeed. Now, this may sound contradictory, but it's not. But a little self doubt is okay, like because it keeps you human, I think. But you can't wallow in it because that's like okay, you want to make sure that you provide as much value and you show up the best way possible, and that gives you your little edge, right? But you don't wallow in it, but just a little bit, like a little bit of nervousness, a little bit of fear, a little bit of that keeps you on your edge to make sure that you are always at the top of your game. But you do have to remind yourself that you've accomplished things before, you've been great at things before, so that you can do this again. And so you are qualified enough. And if you still don't feel like that, then that means continue learning the skill set, continue practicing whatever skill set that is so that you can get to that level. And I already said this, that the a misconception is that you're born with confidence, or either you have it or you don't, and that's not true. That is something that you can learn, that is something that you can build. It's a skill, just like if you want to learn mathematics, you can learn how to be more confident. But everything takes consistent action and doing something, and progress monitoring, tracking your progress, looking at the lessons learned, reflecting, and then getting back out there in the game. All right, so let me know what resonated with you. Let me know what you want to take a deeper dive on. Thank you so much for listening and learning with me. And if you want to stay connected to this show, subscribe to The Remarkable Shift. We are coming back again next week for episode number. Well, I'm not going to keep saying the episode numbers in case I'm thrown off, but we're going to be in our third one, and then I'll stop it after that. But subscribe by going to drvernitaglenn-white.com/. Remarkable Shift. That information will be down below. And then coming up this Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern, I will be doing a live workshop. Now, this isn't like a webinar or a master class. This is go and read the information, drvernitaglenn-white.com/3R live. And I want to do something to where that you'll be able to show up, learn some things, ways to work with me, but get some action steps towards your goals so that you can get some quick wins and see where you may have some blind spots. I don't want you to just hear any more information. That's why I'm doing this live series show, so that if you just want to sit around and listen, great. But I do want to invite you to come off screen, off the platform, but come a little bit behind the scenes so that you can ask those real questions and get some practical advice, some practical tools and tips for your right now, not for something that's way down the road. But I really want us to start off on the right foot, build a solid foundation. So coming to that workshop, it is a curated workshop, so you will have a questionnaire to fill out, so I'll get to know more about you, and then I can tailor whatever frameworks and processes that I have for you to your needs. So I don't want this just to be a blanketed thing where you can just show up and learn some random skill, but I want to make sure that it's targeted and focused to your next now. All right, so that workshop will be happening. It is complimentary. It'll be happening this Saturday, but you must register and complete the questionnaire so that I know that I can, provide you with specific and targeted feedback. It is not just like your typical webinar. It is not just like another masterclass. It is something for you to like really come, show up, and leave with, a product or something like that. All right. So thank you so much for listening and learning with me. If you're watching on the replay, let me know, hashtag replay, and then the information for you to show up to subscribe or show up to the workshop will be down in the information below. All right, until next time, bye.